Welcome to Resilience Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Ostrolenk. This show is about building better humans, institutions, and systems. On the show, I'll be interviewing many different experts from across many different fields, including human optimization, health and fitness, team building, mind-body medicine. In the institutional space, we're looking at different institutions and how we can create new ones, new models and maps, including in medicine, in education, in intelligence community, in law enforcement, in the military, especially in the special operations community. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show. Hey, Andrew, good to see you. This is
Likewise.
a great opportunity for me to have a conversation with Andrew Sridhar. He is a graduate of the Naval Academy. He is a former SEAL. Of course, I guess you're always a SEAL, but you retired from the SEAL community. I also have an MBA from Harvard, which I also want to get into too. And you now spend a lot of time in the consulting space, bringing the skills and knowledge that you learn in your graduate work, I would imagine, as well as in the SEAL community and in the Navy, more broadly speaking, and then spending many years consulting for various large companies, including in the AI space. Is that a quick, accurate overview of you, Andrew?
Yeah, that's a great synopsis. Thanks for the flattering intro. I will say I've done consulting for big companies in the private sector, but also I've been in the guts as a leader of product and technology as a full-time W-2 employee at many of these places. I've seen all sides: the military, the entrepreneurial, the consulting, and the grinding away for the man.
Which I actually have to imagine does you really well when you go in and start consulting and coaching within a particular organization, because you can understand the different levels, the hierarchies, the connections, the relationships, and things along those lines.
Yeah, and I think there are unique struggles that I'm always amazed when I see a show like Severance or The Office, or to some extent Parks and Rec. I'm more of a Parks and Rec guy than an Office guy. I know that's controversial. I probably alienated like 80% of your listeners, but
I love it.
I'm always impressed when people in Hollywood can make a show that depicts employee life with any semblance of accuracy, because it's such a weird place. It's such a place where often we don't we hide ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't have that authenticity. It's a place where people have really, really problematic mental health issues. And if someone hasn't experienced that at firsthand, it's hard for them to apply solutions and to help executives get things done. So, right. Because if you go in and someone says, "Hey, Michael, I'm a senior vice president of X at, Widget Corporation, help me navigate with these teams, help me get these initiatives done." The way they operate is totally different, right? Than because they have to be within that political context, 48 laws of power, like all that stuff is real in the court, the royal court of a big company. Yeah.
And I want to kind of get into your originating story and stuff like that, but I'm planting a seed. I'd love eventually for you to talk about what you saw differently, like within the big Navy, within the SEAL teams, and then what you're noticing in the corporate space, and just in terms of the culture and the relationships and the hierarchy and functionality, how things get done. But before we get there,
seed planted.
Awesome.
Got it.
So talking about, going to the Naval Academy, joining the Navy, was this something you grew up always wanting to do?
The Navy took a little while to take hold in my consciousness. I grew up in Florida, big family, Irish Catholic, oldest of 7 kids, partly for our health and enjoyment and activity, but partly just to get us out of the house. My mom had us in every sport under the sun in the Sunshine State, and we lived pretty close to the ocean, so we were in the pool in the ocean all the time. My mom was also, she's passed a few years ago. Unfortunate, because everyone regarded her as a saint. Obviously, we were biased. They called her Saint Teresa, so my mom was, though, she was terrified of water, kind of for herself, but also definitely for her kids, as a overprotective mama bear. And so like she made darn sure that all of us were swimming like fish from a very early age. We swam competitively year round, no matter didn't matter if we were playing soccer, or if it was baseball season or basketball or whatever. Like we were still swimming every day,
Wow.
for a swim team. So we were moving all over. And so that affinity for the water, being near the water, there was a certain romance for that. But it really started my friends, the four guys that I grew up with that are still some of my best friends on the same cul-de-sac, about the same ages in suburban, I wouldn't even call it suburban, Florida. And one of that, of course, I feel like kids don't really do this anymore except on video games, right? But, essentially like the stereotypical cowboy and Indian sort of stuff, right? And, and you get out the water guns, you get out the Nerf guns, whatever, which by the way, for any listeners, Nerf guns have come like an amazingly long way compared to what they were when Michael and I were young.
Yeah.
Like you were living in, if you get outside off the video games, you're living in a golden age right now. And so that kind of play, but also my dad was very patriotic as a new immigrant, like a lot of new immigrants are. They're more patriotic and more into the history and details of everything because they've lived in another less prosperous environment or a more oppressive environment. That and then my one of the guys I grew up with on the same cul-de-sac, Todd, his grandfather had served in World War II. I want to say D-Day. I might be stretching it there, but I think he actually was a D-Day veteran. And at his church, my buddy Todd's church, he had some of the founders of very early special operations who just happened to go to
Oh,
his church. And
okay.
so I'd hear these stories about this person, that person. And then there was no internet at the time, but I'd see their name in books and things like that. And so, eventually, started considering the Navy as an option as well as Army, primarily special operations focused. Either wanted to be a Green Beret or a
Mhm.
SEAL. And then at that time there were a bunch of uh, some key books. I won't mention them. Some key books and magazine articles that came out like right at that time in the 90s, where in high school, and every guy I know who's been a SEAL or Green Beret or something else from my era, like they can name the exact books and that we all read the same ones.
Like
And it's like
Marcinko's book?
Marchenko's books, and then there was like this Newsweek um, cover story, which I think was called Secret Warriors, something like that. And then there was another one too. This book that really went into details of all sorts of operations in the 1970s and 80s, and some of the proto special operations units and operations. And so, sorry, I'm going long here, but basically, every guy read those, and there wasn't this as much mystique and awareness about the community that I would eventually enter. And so, just got into West Point, got into the Naval Academy, but decided that the Naval Academy seemed like a much funner place, with Navy bases and the Naval Academy in much better locations. I wanted to be a SEAL ultimately, so that's how I ended up at the Naval Academy.
When you're in the Naval Academy, did you get into a pipeline to become a SEAL, or was that after the fact?
There's not. Yeah. I think I know what you're asking. I'll answer a question audience I have. Like, there's no pipeline at the Naval Academy to be a SEAL, right? So you are there, um, and you can compete to become a SEAL, but there's not really a playbook, or at least there wasn't then. Maybe there is now. Uh, yeah, and there's certain unwritten things that you had to do to get
Mhm.
known by the SEAL officers and chiefs who were stationed at the Naval Academy as instructors, company officers. But to get known by them, get good grades, get good physical fitness scores, all the things. But yeah, it was a little bit of an unwritten game. Whereas if you wanted to be a pilot or a submarine officer, Marine, like it was very clear everything you had to do in order to get there. And no, I'm not throwing any shade. Not that I use that phrase very often. My kids would roll their eyes. I'm sure that's way outdated. but those communities are also a lot easier to get into. So around, what was it, middle of senior year, yeah, I think in, what is it, November, December, you have what's called service selection night or day, whatever it is. And you find out of your whatever top three choices that you interviewed for and put in applications for and all the things, what you got. And at the top of my list was SEALs. I did not get that right
Mm.
out of the Naval Academy. And so that was, up to that point, I had lived a, blessed life compared to most people in the world. I wasn't going hungry. I had my health. I had my family and a free education at one of the top institutions in the world. But at the same time, that was probably the worst day of my life that I had ever had at that point. But second on my list, I had chosen intentionally a ship to go to a ship, because I knew that, hey, if I don't get SEALs out of the Naval Academy, I can still go from the ship. And luckily, I was able to lateral transfer from there and learned a lot of great lessons on the ship. I really enjoyed the people there. I did not enjoy the job at all. And I will say, I did not enjoy the Naval Academy, like, at all. And I should have, a good buddy of mine from the SEAL teams and a fellow Naval Academy guy, has really changed my perspective on this. And I adopt his view now that I should have enjoyed it more.
Mm.
Like, I should have taken the view of, like, okay, I've decided to be here. I've decided to stay here. I almost left. I had my papers in. I got into some nice schools. I was going to leave after my second year because I was like, this place that isn't hard. It just sucks really bad.
Mm.
And I thought maybe I wanted to do other things. But I decided to stay to become a SEAL. And yeah, I should have approached it better and just made my peace with it, of like, this is what it is. Just, yeah, enjoy the present, try and build relationships with these people who, some of them aren't really your tribe, but make the most of it.
Is that a lesson that you take into your present day life and kind
Mm-hmm.
of mind shift for you and also teach your clients?
It is. It is. Honestly, Michael, I feel like this is a little bit of a broken record statement and obvious to maybe a lot of your listeners, but I can't stop saying it in the hope that it reaches some people who haven't heard it enough or haven't heard it in the right way and had that aha moment for themselves. But it's all about being present, right? It sounds cheesy, right? But it is. Like, life is short. And it doesn't mean that we're all that we should pursue hedonistic pleasure every moment of every day, right? That's a recipe for probably misery, and a lot of failure in life, and not being able to have your future self enjoy things
Mhm.
in their present. But yeah, you need to be able to enjoy the journey to build anything great. You need to be able to be comfortable in the present moment and aware of things in order to soak them in and enjoy life, and in order to have a better mood, a
Yeah,
better
yeah.
approach, be less reactive, be less angry. Presence really changed my life, and how I cultivated presence was through mindfulness.
Okay.
And the way I created mindfulness was through meditation, which a lot of people call breath work. Breath work is essentially meditation, with a less woo sounding name for some people. But I can't be more of an evangelist for starting a meditation practice. There's other things that that you may want to throw in here as well that are completely valid tools for folks. But the reason we still talk about Buddha today and Buddhism, like, is because of that. Like, if there's one lesson from all of that, it is the ability to be present, the ability to calm the mind, is such a complete game changer.
100% agree. I'm just being able to notice and be an observer of one's thoughts and feelings and sensations. And kind of, as you said, it gives you that space so you can be responsive, not reactive for whatever's
Mm-hmm.
happening in your human system. So I 100% agree. Meditation is definitely an important practice. I still want to get more of your history, but is meditation or mindfulness something you bring into your work when you're consulting with businesses?
I do, and I'm starting. So I do teach the practice to clients and the science behind it, as well as practical ways to get started, and give them examples of real life situations in the workplace of, whatever, office politics, or an important pitch, or what, and how you use these things, right, to in various facets of your life and business. And at the same time, I'm building the reps of actually walking people through this, right? So, I'm not trained by yogis. I haven't done a ton of group sessions with folks, full disclosure, of like, hey, let's sit down and let's close our eyes for 10 minutes. And if you do that, that's awesome. I know there's a bunch of other reputable folks, including one guy, I'll give him a plug, John McCaskill. I think you know
I
him.
really
Like,
think that John,
yeah, like he and his partner on the pocket, like they literally do that kind of stuff, and it's awesome. I'm early in that journey there of
yeah,
doing it for other people. Yeah.
someone you said you swam a lot thanks to your mother. And I know like some of the interesting science on guided meditation or guided imagery, I should say, like you see yourself going through the motions of whatever the thing is, shooting free throws or swimming or firing your weapon or having a conversation with your spouse, whatever the thing is. Did
Yeah.
that ever play a role with you as you entered into this space or presently now that you use guided imagery for yourself, let alone your clients?
I do. I was just talking to someone at length about this yesterday. Visualization is such an important part of what I do. And I think honestly, it's all rooted. Well, first of all, I have a mind that is just like well, first of all, the thing that distinguishes us as humans from a lot of other species is the ability to plan ahead, right? The ability to think and see an infinite number of futures play out, and then to choose one of them. And if we going back to mindfulness, if we can be mindful and aware of our thoughts, we can choose better futures amongst those. Because if we
Amen.
let our emotions decide for us, that's probably not going to be the best place to be. Of course, if we're just rational and just going by what's good on paper, that's not good either. Some of my worst decisions have been, hey, this makes sense on paper. I'm going to go against what feels good inside. Yeah.
Actually, a question about yeah, it's interesting because I was thinking like the rational mind, yes, really important, right? Yeah, having the access to the emotions, not necessarily, you're not 3 years old, you don't have to act on them, but like it's valuable
Yeah.
information. But I'm wondering, how about intuition? Because I would imagine that could have saved your life many times as a combat veteran. What
Mm-hmm.
intuition play a role for you personally as well as in your professional life?
Yeah. Yeah. Just to, if I could, I'm just going to round the visualization part. Is
Yeah.
that I think that was for me was rooted in sports. Is
Okay.
that visualize a shot, visualize a shot, visualize a shot. I'm not talking about guns. That could be later, right? And that's stuff we did. But yeah. So people who are not visualizing the things, including the negative things that can go wrong, right? I think about Michael Phelps. He was, it's pretty popular now, right? But run practice races with his coach where his goggles were like intentionally like around his under his nose, or still in his eyes but full of water, or like all kinds of stuff, right, in order to just so that way when bad stuff happened he could be ready for it. It was no big deal. And so we want to picture the perfect shot, but we also want to picture, okay, this might happen, this might happen, this might happen, and don't get down on it. Don't catastrophize, right? Because that's not a good place to be either. But get yourself a little bit ready mentally for how you deal with situations. So for intuition, um, it's a tricky one, and I'm making a bookmark for myself because I should write about this because it's a fascinating topic and one that I admit um, I won't have a completely satisfactory answer for your listeners, but I will try. To me, intuition is um, one of those things that is almost like the art versus science debate when it comes to businesses and manufacturing specifically, or design. So there was this case we did at Harvard Business School, and it was about this. I can't remember what they call it, but it's basically it's a job shop where there's all this expensive manufacturing equipment, and everything this one company did um, was pretty custom orders for clients, and it would take forever for them to complete a job, and there was no standardization of how these very very experienced craftsmen would go from thing to thing and how they would proceed. And the argument from the old guys running the shop was like this is an art. Like you can't sciency this thing. um but in reality, not much of a spoiler for people listening, especially those who've been working for a while. Like, actually, you could break this down into science. You just need to run the right experiments and collect the right data, have the right inputs, have the right feedback loops, and document the processes. And so the reason I bring that up is because intuition is a lot of times regarded as this magical thing, but really it's pattern matching, right? It's pattern matching based on experience. And it's the uh, I'm gonna screw this up from Daniel Kahneman's book of Thinking Fast and Slow. I think it's system one, the fast one, right? It's system one of your brain. You can correct me later on if I got that wrong. It's the fast part of the brain doing computations and assessments on a probabilistic basis, almost like basically an AI model, right? Because our brains are computers, even though they don't operate the same way under the hood exactly. Like, our brains are computers, and they're computers in the AI sense of they're doing things probabilistically, and a lot of those computations can happen like without us being aware of them, and that's all intuition is. And you sharpen it over time, and a lot of times, because we can't see the computations of intuition, a like I met with magic earlier, we assume other people might have better intuition than us because they were just born with it. Kind of the talent versus growth mindset, right? Fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Like, no, actually, we all probably have pretty darn good intuition based upon our DNA and evolution, and our intuition can improve, right? Take a 5-time entrepreneurial founder, right? Take that person's intuition versus the guy or gal who's just starting their first business, right? Like, the 5-timer, like, everyone knows, it's obvious. Like, the 5-timer is going to have an insane intuition, in quotes, right? They'll be able to just think of those things like crazy. But it's kind of not magical. It's just building that muscle. And so the calls that we would make as junior officers or mid-grade officers and senior enlisted folks that I had the honor of working with, like, eventually you get really good at making those calls, just on the fly, faster than anyone can think. And from the outside looking in, it'd be like crazy, right? But it's just honed within this system that gets you the reps, and you have all this context of how we operate and how best practice is, and guided by a bunch of first principles, like, a bad plan executed aggressively or violently is better than no plan at all. So some way you just got to make the decision. And so, yeah, that's a lot of kind of incoherent thoughts on intuition, but yeah, I'm kind of passionate about it.
Yeah, yeah. It all makes sense. So, and I still want to finish up your story, but
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I'm long-winded here.
oh no, I keep getting tangent. Like, I want to talk about this. One thing that crossed my mind because you're talking about Michael Phelps is like, oh, what does your mom think when you have to do drown proofing? Did she know about that? Like,
Oh, funny. Well, there was a lot of mm, lore, I guess, about SEAL training when I went in, because again, it wasn't that popular. I was at the Naval Academy pre 9/11. SEALs hadn't done a zillion operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, all these other places, right? We hadn't killed Osama bin Laden and done all these hostage rescue, like all this stuff. None of that had happened yet. And so, and there wasn't a Discovery Channel documentary. People weren't writing books all the time. There were some books, but yeah, and no one even knew there was no such thing as a podcast. And so I remember some friend of a friend who was probably 5 years older than me when I was in middle school or early high school, and he goes, like, oh yeah, like, they drown you there. I'm like, well, drowning means you die. So they probably don't do that. Like drowning literally means you dry. That's why doctors will say it's a near drowning, right? If you almost die in the water. So I'm like, they probably aren't drowning people, or no one would pass. But it was very weird. It's like, like this doesn't pass the smell test. Like that literally people's, lungs are breathing in water, right? Like not, I don't know if I'm buying that. Drown proofing is a whole thing that we can talk about. Maybe you've talked about it before with your listeners. And it is an incredibly scary evolution. My mom, to answer your question, my mom did not quite know
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
everything that Buzz was going to entail. I don't think she watched Discovery Channel documentary. Funny enough, depicts several of my classmates from the Naval Academy while I was on
Okay.
the ship. They're the ones who had, whatever, had been honored and privileged and had done the work and maybe a little luck to get it right out of the Naval Academy. And so she definitely didn't watch that. So yeah, she did not.
Okay.
She did not
Good.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she was very worried though. She did not. She was not the biggest fan of me going to the SEAL teams.
How long were you in the full Navy before you left and went to, did you go to Harvard right afterwards, or like what's your time?
Yeah, so it was Naval Academy, and then I was on a ship for about a year and a half. Went to Buds. Was in class 243. I got rolled due to an injury. Right, it's a class 244. And that's the class I graduated with. I was the class leader of that class in Buds, and then SEAL teams for till 8. So 8 years total in the Navy, plus the Naval Academy, which I do count, even though it doesn't count for retirement purposes. So 12 years total, and then Harvard Business School. Then went to Wall Street right from there, right around the time of the financial crisis. Ironically, the banks were still hiring MBAs after the financial crisis or during, and but tech companies weren't. So I started there, but eventually made my way to tech and other things.
So talk to us about like what do you do now with all this great experience at the Naval Academy, in the Navy, the SEALs, and you said as a W-2 employee in financial services and tech, you've done a lot of really cool things. How does that show up today with what you do with your client?
Yeah, I am passionate about transforming organizations, starting with high performance mindset, so that people can lead themselves and lead teams to perform at the elite level.
Mhm.
I do that through keynotes, workshops, training, and some bespoke consulting arrangements as well. And then one-on-one executive coaching is a great way to engage with people on that deep level who are looking to unlock what their goals are, or how do I get there, right? And so coaching is an interesting thing for people who haven't tried it. I'm sure you've come across this as well. There's so many coaches out there. It's hard to know what coaching even is. How do you trust somebody? But a coach can be a variety of things, and it's a little different. It's kind of that athletic coach, but it's a little bit different too in the business sphere. I'm kind of in between that. Someone telling you everything to do, which could be an advisor or a mentor, and then short of that is an athletic coach, and then on the other end of the spectrum is like therapist,
Yeah, yeah.
and then somewhat in of therapist is the kind of business definition of an executive coach, where all they do is ask you powerful questions. They sit there and smile and they just keep asking you questions. And that, no offense to people who do it, but maybe I don't know, maybe offense is intended. I don't know. It's a little cheesy, right? Like if your job is just to ask questions, like I don't know, like it doesn't pass the smell test for me. And so people do find value in that. And I do believe that great questions are often way better than great answers. Whether you're a leader, whether you're an employee, whether you're just in life, I really do believe that. I did come up with that independently of Tony Robbins. Although if you want to listen to him instead of me. That's totally fine. But yeah, I'm in that middle where, you know, I walk the line of unlicensed therapy in quotes, as people sometimes make fun of coaching. I do engage in that because I've dealt with a lot of those mindset, mental health struggles myself. Again, unlicensed, not a clinician. Um, but also, you know, some of the other stuff like accountability partner and giving people actionable frameworks that they can use for themselves with their team, many of which are proprietary to me based upon my experience, but building upon the great background I was lucky to have at the Naval Academy and the SEAL teams and Harvard Business School.
That's awesome. So, like, if someone's listening to this and like, man, Andrew sounds great. How do I get in contact with him? What kind of programs does he offer? How do I work with him?
Yeah.
That's that question.
Yeah, I'd encourage people to DM me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way. I'm also at Andrew at thewarriorpoet.com, Andrew at thewarriorpoet.com. I've got a newsletter. I publish on LinkedIn all the time. And so my newsletter is linked on my LinkedIn. I'm at thewarriorpoet.com as my website, thewarriorpoet.com. And you can also access a whole bunch of information about my keynotes, my coaching, and sign up for the newsletter there as well. It's weekly, and I share tips and tools based upon the SEAL teams, Andreessen Horowitz startups, Amazon, and all that sort of stuff for folks. So yeah, engage with me any way you want for folks out there. And just at the risk of repeating it, I do executive coaching one-on-one. I've done some group coaching in the past, so I'm open to that for the right client group. I do workshops, and I even have a 12-month program to walk
Mhm.
companies through step by step as a team. Here's how you perform at the elite level, based upon the SEAL teams, based upon the best practices in tech, in AI, and in elite teams I've seen perform in business throughout my.
That's fantastic. I'll make sure to include all those ways of contacting you on the show notes. Uh,
Awesome. Thank you.
Great to talk to you. I appreciate
Yeah. Likewise, Michael. This was so great. I'm glad we did this. And I hope we get to do it again soon because my long-winded answers there didn't leave a lot of room for you to ask more questions.
Well, actually, I was going to ask if I was going to ask you offline, but since you brought it back up, I would love to have you back on to actually continue the conversation because we just kind of
Yeah,
talked on many things, and I want to kind of unpack more.
I love it. Let's do a part two or a part two, however you want to do it.
I'll follow back up with you offline. I'll text you a little bit later. All
Cool.
right, thanks. Andy.
Awesome.
All right, take care.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. Take care, man.